You ever feel like you take one step forward and life makes you take like 3-4 steps back, and you just feel like you're just like in this perpetual cycle of never getting farther ahead than you were before? Like you just feel like you're just constantly being backpedaled. I can tell you from a physical standpoint, that's kind of how I feel most of the time when it comes to like my fitness. I like to think of myself as, you know, being pretty fit in the sense that, you know, I can run, I can lift, I can go for long distances for a really long time without like really having to worry about, oh, am I going to be able to make it back, right? This morning, after years and years and years and years and years of like kind of just like, can I get an MRI on my back? Can I get an MRI on my back? Trying to use my own private insurance to get an MRI on my back, being denied because they wanted me to go to physical therapy, which I think is kind of a joke in the sense that it's like, you know, I literally was in the military. I destroyed my back on a jump that was like what ultimately ended my potential long-term career in the military, was that injury that I suffered on a jump at Fort Bragg, and wound up tearing part of my abdomen, had a bunch of damage done in my groin, a bunch of stuff. But, you know, military being military, they kind of just like shoo you away and kind of leave it at that. They don't dig any deeper. They don't want to look at like any of the other larger pieces of damage. And then you're kind of just left to kind of pick up the pieces throughout your life. So that was in 2014. Here we are in 2025. So what is that? 11 years in the future. And now, you know, I've constantly had these pains that have just, they've just festered. Like I've always had them. They've always been there. You know, but I still have to live my life. I still have a life to live. I think that there's like this common misconception that, you know, just because you are on disability from the military, that all of a sudden you're like incapable of doing all of these physical things. Like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that because you have disability. It's like, no, because there's still a life to live. You know, it's just a matter of how uncomfortable do you want to be throughout your life, having to deal with these constant aches and pains and these injuries that just get worse, right? They progress, they get worse over time. As we get older, we generally don't get like, sure, you can get more fit, but when it comes to like skeletal and things like that, things that are just going to break down over time anyways, there's really nothing you can do about it. So luckily, I was able to get an MRI because I've been dealing with some issues with my like pretty much my neck all the way down to the top of my ass, right? And I had some x-rays done. The x-rays show that I do have some issues in my C5 to C7, you know, the shortening of the spine, basically, you know, disc degeneration, even in my lumbar or in my thoracic spine and my lumbar spine. So basically every part of my back is slowly starting to kind of like collapse on itself, to the point now where sometimes I'll just bend over and pick something up and I will literally get dropped to my knees, and I will be in pretty much very uncomfortable for about a week to 2 weeks before like I recover. So I don't know if that's a bulged disc, a pinched nerve. I don't know. All I know is it is driven in the spine. And I've always been somebody that believes that, you know, you can't treat something if you don't actually know what it is that you're trying to treat. That's why when my personal insurance denied my MRI and said that they wanted me to go to 6 weeks worth of physical therapy, I was kind of like, why would I go to 6 weeks worth of physical therapy when you guys don't even know what you're actually trying to fix? Like there's nothing for you to even know besides what I'm telling you. And what I'm telling you, you're probably going to misinterpret it anyways, because that's what you guys, the medical world, has done all these years when it came to a few things that I've dealt with in my life. And one of the big ones is when I was in high school, I kept having knee problems. And you can probably see, if you can see, I got this giant scar right here that runs basically from my groin to my down to the top of my knee. And what had happened is I basically had a bunch of tumors in my leg, and I kept complaining like, ow, my leg hurts, it's super uncomfortable. You touch it, it was super tender, all these things. And they always were, oh, it's just growing pains, it's just growing pains, it's just growing pains. And it's like, I get it. There's people who complain to just complain for whatever reason. They're hypochondriacs or whatever. But I've always been a very active kid, and I've always been a pretty tough kid. And I'm a pretty tough adult, right? But there are certain things where it's like, you shouldn't feel this way. And if you feel that you shouldn't feel that way, you go to the doctor, you say, listen, I've got this pain that's pretty, it's getting pretty bad and it's a little weird. And then they go, oh, it's no big deal. And then they try to compare you to somebody else who came in there and had something similar. And it's like, I don't want to be compared to somebody else that came in here, right? I personally am not like the majority of other people. So to compare me to somebody else who had a similar pain in an area, who hasn't even lived the life that I've lived or done the things that I've done physically, I don't want to be compared to them. Don't even put me in the same category as those people. So long story short, I did wind up having something wrong with my leg. I had benign tumors. I had 800 of these bad boys just growing inside of my thigh all the way down into my knee. So when I go to a doctor and then they tell me that there's nothing wrong from what I'm telling them, and them poking around and touching it with their fingers and go, well, it's nothing, that really does piss me off, because the military looks at it as, well, why aren't you 400? If you're in so much pain, why aren't you 400 pounds? Because I refuse to be fucking 400 pounds. That's why. I don't want to be 400 fucking pounds. And so, I'm at this point where it's just a matter of like finding out like what's wrong, like what is truly wrong with my leg, or not my leg, but my back. And if there's some minor damage, or there's something that can be worked in like at least somewhat rehabilitated on an ongoing basis to feel better, then I'm game. I don't want to have back surgery, especially at 35 years old. I don't even think I want to have back surgery. If I have to have it, I'd rather have it while I'm younger and I'm capable of rehabilitating to, at least 95% or even back to kind of like where I'm at, but my back feels better, then so be it. But at the same time, if there's other ways to kind of mitigate, then do it. I try to take it easier on myself, but there's also things that, like I said, I have a life to live. I don't want to feel that I have to limit myself because of aches and pains, right? I've been living with it for forever now, but it is slowly getting to the point where it's like, when you get dropped to your knees and then your body just hurts, like your whole spine hurts for weeks, there's a problem there. And what also blows my mind, especially when it comes to military disability, is how you have individuals who worked in like S shops who did not do organized PT, didn't go to the field. Their jobs were strictly, paperwork biatches, and they get out and they get 100% disability for anxiety and depression and all these things, while you've got people who served in combat arms who, just because also they didn't deploy doesn't mean that they didn't use their bodies, because part of the majority of your time in the military anyways is spent in the field training, doing things. If you're in a really good unit, they do hold you to a pretty high PT standard. So you do organize PT every day. You go to the field and you do you know, you LARP, you're a professional LARPer. So you use your body, you know, if you're in special operations or, you know, Rangers or airborne, you know, you do tend to work a little bit harder than some of these other units when it comes to the training, the jumping, the rucking. A lot of it's light infantry stuff. So it's like, you know, you spend a lot of time on your feet with weight on your back. It's, you know, it just blows my mind, the rating system of how they rate injuries. And maybe there's a reason behind, like they have it separated by like your job. So they just assume that, you know, if you were in combat arms of some kind, that of course you're going to probably leave with injury. So if they had to give you, you know, rate everybody equally, they would have to give almost every combat arms veteran, you know, 100%, you know, disability. And I just think that people do abuse it. 100% people abuse the disability thing. Some people know how to work the system. They know how to say the right things when they go to these appointments. I'm honest. It's like, listen, my fucking back hurts. You know, I have full range of motion. Is it comfortable? No. And then, you know, even when I was clearing the military, the doctor that I had was really cool because his exact words were, I don't care if you can do the full range of motion. That's not what I want to see. I want to see where does the pain begin, and that's the number that I'm looking for when they use that little protractor thing. And I've gone back to be reevaluated, not at the VA, but through whatever those contractor things that they use. And the guy was like, okay, bend down, touch your toes. And I was like, do you want me to go and touch my toes, or do you want me to go to where the pain begins? He's like, oh no, I need you to go all the way to your toes. And I said, well, how does that make any sense? Because you're going to put that on there that I have full range of motion, and that's not how this works. You're not supposed to test all the way full range of motion. So I don't even think the people that they hire to contract out these injury reviews for your disability even know what the actual standard is. So they're submitting things back to the VA, and there's somebody sitting at a desk that's looking at those reports and then looking at their little rating book, and then they're denying your claim because there's a miscommunication between the civilian side and the VA in the way that they do things. So, you know, you sit there and you chase your tail, and it's like, how do I not get more disability when I have x-rays that even show injury? Now I got an MRI that's coming, and I have a pretty good feeling that it's going to show some other stuff, probably more of the disc and the spine itself, some issues with the spine. So I don't know. To me, it's so irritating that, you know, it is the way that it is. Like right now, my back is pretty sore, just because like I go through phases where it's like I feel really good, and then I come in and I work out because I'm feeling good, and I do a little bit heavier, and I wind up paying for it for a while before, you know, I feel good again. So, all right. There's this guy, since I'm on this military kick right now, who on TikTok, who is very, very aggressive the way that he talks. He's the type of veteran, I guess if you want to call him that, who says that if you didn't deploy, he doesn't really see you as like a veteran. at least when it comes to getting disability, that he thinks that if you didn't deploy, you don't deserve disability. And I knew something about him kind of rubbed me the wrong way. His attitude, his aggressiveness. Come to find out, he was court-martialed out of the military. So it would make sense that he is very bitter because he was kicked out. And maybe he doesn't get disability. I don't know his whole backstory. What I do know is that he said that the whole reason why he got court-martialed was he was seeking mental health help without his leadership knowing after they got back from their deployment. And they didn't like that. So they court-martialed him. I'm going to assume there's probably more to the story than what he's telling, just based off of his attitude. So, but I just thought that was kind of entertaining. So many people who I've noticed are these, whoa, yeah, raw, type from all different branches, usually are your shittier soldiers, I guess you could say. Like, something about them is just, they probably didn't have a very good time. They were treated terribly because they had a bad attitude. So, I don't know. Just. Shoulders are cooked. I'm so sore. Workout complete. Took me, with rest and everything, took about an hour. But something, a quick little piece of technology that everybody should get. It's $100. I guess more so. It doesn't have to be Garmin, but it can be, I think it's like the other brands like Polar. I think Fitbit has their own version of like a heart monitor. Most smart watches and like any of these fitness tracker watches have the ability to just attach any type of, heart monitor to it. But for me, I bought this because, when you're doing like arm stuff and you're putting your arms above your head, or maybe this just isn't getting as much flow to that area of the body, you get really like all over the place readings. These heart rate monitors that go right across your chest, right underneath your nipples, do a really good job at kind of giving it a little bit more consistent heart rate. Obviously, none of this stuff is like 100% accurate, but it's pretty close. And I like kind of tracking like the height of my heart rate, and then kind of like when I recover, I let it drop down to, let's just say like 120 before I pick up, do another set. And that's just kind of hitting, different ranges of my heart rate. So if you're somebody who likes data and kind of uses that as like your, kind of like where you feel like, okay, good, I can put in a little bit, I can do max effort again. Then, I never used to be like that. I used to be pretty good at just kind of like judging my own breathing and my own like body, I guess. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten lazier. So I kind of like the technology telling me when I'm ready to go into my next set. But that's today's workout. I had my little rant in the beginning. But yeah, today wanted to go a little bit heavier again. Like I said, my back is just a little sore from the other day. I did a little bit heavier effort, all because I felt really good, and now I'm kind of sort of paying for it. It is what it is. It's the story of my life. It's kind of just how it works for me. But maybe we'll be able to find out here soon, like what kind of damage is actually done to my back, and maybe there's a way to kind of rehabilitate and get better. But yeah, so that's it. Everyone have a fantastic day. Peace.